Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Kapendra from Kirodimal College, University of Delhi. Today we are going to discuss about a module Human Population Growth under paper Principle of Ecology. After studying this module, you shall be able to understand the term population growth, know different types of growth forms, concept of zero population growth, understand demographic transition, learn about Indian population growth and measures to control human population. Populations are not static entities and all the organisms have the capacity for substantial population growth. The potential for reproduction is always greater than achieved. A human female produces 300 to 400 ova in the course of her lifetime. If conception occurs at maximum rate, a female can produce one young every 12 to 15 months or 20 to 25 youngs in the course of her lifetime. This is still 8 to 10 times higher reproductive potential than the average family size in most countries. Growth forms. Populations have characteristic patterns of increase called population growth forms. The two basic patterns based on the shapes of arithmetic plots of growth curves are J-shaped and S-shaped or sigmoid growth forms. When a few individuals are introduced into a suitable but unoccupied area with an unlimited environmental resource, its population will tend to increase geometrically. Many species are regulated by both internal and external factors and maintain relatively stable population size. The growth curve described by such a population is S-shaped or sigmoid curve. Human population growth, an insight into the human history, indicates that human populations have not been very large as compared to other species of organisms. For thousands of years, the population growth has been very slow. Archaeological evidences and historical description suggest that about 300 million people were living at the time of Christ. The population was limited by high mortality rate, and even in great civilization of Egypt, Greece and Rome, expectation of life did not exceed 30 years. The population checks were done by disease, famine and wars. About 25% of the adult population of Europe died due to epidemics of bubonic plague in 14th century. The number of other diseases like malaria and yellow fever also limited the abundance and distribution of humans in tropical countries. Human populations showed rapid growth only after 1600 AD. This was because of rapid growth in the field of agriculture, industries, and power. Better medical facilities, hygiene also played very important role in human population growth. As a result of developmental activities around the world, human population is now experiencing exponential pattern of growth. The population reached 1 billion mark in 1804, but it took about 150 years to reach 3 billion mark in 1960. In our global human population crosses the 7 billion mark in 2015. The needs of this huge number of human beings cannot be supported by Earth's natural resources without degrading the quality of human life. Apart from birth and death rate, the size of a population is also influenced by immigration and emigration of the individuals which are constantly entering or leaving the population. Therefore, the population projection for the future can be had from the equation, that is n future, which is equal to n present plus b minus d plus I minus e. In this case, n future represents the predicted population size at a given time in the future and represent population size. B is birth rate and D is death rate. I represents immigration and E represents emigration respectively. The human population is increasing at a rate which outstrip the capacity of social and physical resources. Every second, on an average, 4 to 5 children are born on the earth, and at the time 2 people die, and it amounts to a net gain of 2.5 more humans per second in the world. We became the most numerous species on this planet when we reached the 6.3 billion numbers in 2003. Population size changes due to birth, death, and migration. Birth rate and death rate are decreasing worldwide, but death rate have fallen more sharply than birth rate. The exponential growth rate has not disappeared but occurring at a slower rate. India reached a population of 1.1 billion in 2003, and if current growth rate continues, India will have 1.63 billion people in 2050 and will overtake China as the most populous country, but it will be a great problem for India to provide food, education, employment, healthcare to all its people. One view is that overpopulation will lead to resource depletion and environmental degradation, causing the life support system to collapse. There will be increasing pressure for birth control programs and to reduce the fertility rate. The second view is that human ingenuity, technology, and enterprise can extend the world's carrying capacity, enabling the people to overcome any problem encountered. Some people believe that current strategies are artificial and creation of few rich people because of their tendency of greed, wastefulness, and oppression. The root cause of environmental degradation seems to be inequitable distribution of wealth and power. Global population growth the world population is growing by more than 90 million per year, of which 93% is in developing countries. In the past, population growth was a gradual phenomenon, and the Earth's ability to replenish resources was capable of adjusting to this increase. In the recent past, the escalation in growth of human numbers has become a major cause of our environmental problem. If no action is taken, it will become a staggering 7.92 billion. Human population growth increased from 1 to 2 billions in first 123 years, 2 to 3 billions in 33 years, 3 to 4 billion in next 14 years, 4 to 5 billion in 13 years, 5 to 6 billion in 11 years, 3 to 4 billion in 14 years, 4 to 5 billion in 13 years, and 5 to 6 billion in next 11 years. Demographically, the world can be divided into two contrasting groups. One group is that part of the world which has less developed countries of Africa, Asia, and Latin America, representing 80% of the world's population. The other group is of richer countries of North America, Western Europe, Japan, and Australia. This part of the world is wealthy, old, and populations do not show sign of growth. Zero population growth for progress and welfare of the people in less developed countries. An attempt should be made to attain zero population growth. It takes several generations to replacement level fertility to reach zero population growth. In Europe, 2.1 is considered to be the population replacement level, while for Germany it is 1.37. Spain it is 1.32. Greece 1.29, and for Italy it is 1.33. Demographic transition. Demographic transition is based on interpretation of American demographer Warren Thompson. He observed transition in birth and death rate in industrialized society in the past 200 years. Demographer Frank Nordstein in 1945 also observed a typical pattern of falling death rate and birth rate due to improved living conditions accompanied by economic development. He called this pattern demographic transition from high birth and death rate to lower birth and death rates. The transition takes place in 4 stages. The first stage is pre-industrial phase. In pre-industrial phase, the balance between death rate and birth rate till the late 18th century characterizes it. The birth and death rates are high, around 30 to 50 per thousand, and population growth is slow. Sometimes it is also known as stationary stage of population growth. High death rates were due to disease, food storage, and poor living conditions. High birth rates could have been due to factors associated with high fertility, seen even today in less developed countries. Second is transitional stage. There is increase in population due to decline in the death rate. The decline in death rate is due to improvement in food, agricultural yield, and public health system. Due to decline in death rate, rapid increase in population growth occurs, and the gap between birth and death become wider. There is a change in the age structure of the population as deaths are confined to 5 to 10 years ages. The decline in death rate resulted in increased survival of children, and the age structure of the population become expanding type. The third stage is industrial stage. It is characterized by fall in birth rates which eventually approaches the death rates as industrialization and modernization become widespread. Population growth continues but at a slower rate depending on the economic conditions. In rural areas, people realized the need not to have many children for comfortable old age. The fourth is post-industrial stage. This is characterized by stability of the population. The decline in birth rates continues further till it equals the death rate and thus reaching the zero population growth. The birth rate falls below the death rate and the total population size declines gradually till zero population growth is attained. It is estimated that 38 countries of Europe containing about 13% of the world population have entered this stage. In most of the developing countries, death rates have fallen much more than birth rates, and these countries are still in the transition stage. The population growth rate is high and economic development is not fully attained. Some economists are of the view that these developing countries will make the demographic transition over the next few decades without increased family welfare efforts. Number of workers have different opinions about the population growth. Rapid population growth in developing countries will outstrip economic growth and degrade local life support system. These countries may be trapped in demographic transition stage. As in Africa, the factors that allowed developing countries to develop are not available to many of the developing countries, as they could not have enough workers to produce technically advanced products needed to compete in global economy. Since 1980, the developing countries have experienced a drop in economic assistance from developed countries and a rise in their debt to such countries will slow down the pace of development. Social reforms coupled with growing prosperity leads to reduced desire for large families. Modern technology can be made use of in making the developing countries advanced much earlier. Developing countries can learn from the mistakes of more developed countries and devise strategies to attain stability at the earliest. Many people feel that social justice is the key to successful demographic transition. The world has enough resources for everyone, but inequitable social and economic system lead to maldistribution of these resources. Population growth in India. India is a developing country. On one side, it is engaged in developmental activities, while on the other side, it is struggling with the ways and means of controlling its rapidly increasing population. The first family program of the world was launched in India in 1952, and at that time its population was around 400 million. In 2003, after 51 years, India's population was 1.1 billion, and it was the world's second most populous country. The population and sex ratio of India from 1901 to 2001 on the basis of census taken every 10 years. The population density of India was 324 people per square kilometer. West Bengal had the highest population density of 903 people per square kilometer, and Delhi had the highest density of 9340 people per square kilometer. The sex ratio is unfavorable to females. It was 933 females per thousand males in 2001. India has 2.4% of the world's surface area but sustain 16.7% of the world population. The National Commission on Population was constituted under the chairmanship of Prime Minister to provide overall guidance for population stabilization by promoting synergy between demographic, educational, environmental, and developmental programs. Though the Indian government is doing its best to improve the living standard of its ever increasing population by providing employment, food, education, and housing, but the situation may worse if the population continue to grow rapidly. By global standards, Indian people are poor and nearly half of its labor force is unemployed. The only good news is that India is currently self-sufficient in food production, but still 40% of its population and 50% of its children suffer from malnutrition, mainly because of poverty. About half of the country's cropland is degraded as a result of soil erosion, water logging, sanitation, and deforestation. Also, 70% of India's water is polluted and sanitation services are often inadequate. The results of family welfare programs have not been very encouraging, maybe due to poor planning, bureaucratic inefficiency, the low status of women, and financial support. The government has propagated the advantages of small families, but still Indian women have on an average 3.1 children. Generally, there is a strong preferences for male children and couples keep on having children until they have a boy. Thus, in spite of awareness of family welfare programs in majority of populations, about half of the people may be using some method of birth control. Different methods of population control includes family welfare programs in which couples are educated or make aware to plan the number and spacing of their children. Economic measures for educational programs through schools and other communication media to explain people with the advantages of small families to themselves and to the society. Other measures include late marriage and childlessness. Birth control methods mean any method to reduce birth. So students, let us summarize what we have learned in this module. Populations are not static entities and all the organisms have the capacity for substantial population growth. Populations have characteristic pattern of increase called population growth forms. The two basic patterns based on the shapes of arithmetic plot of growth curves are the J-shaped and S-shaped or sigmoid growth forms. Demographically, the world can be divided into two contrasting groups. One group is that part of the world which has less developed countries of Africa, Asia, and Latin America, representing 80% of the world's population. The other group is North America, Western Europe, Japan, and Australia. This part of the world is wealthy, old, and populations do not show sign of growth. For progress and welfare of the people in developing countries, population growth has to be controlled and an attempt should be made to attain zero population growth. The demographic transition takes place in four stages. Pre-industrial phase was characterized by a balance between birth and death rate till the late 18th century. Transitional stage was characterized by increase in populations due to improvement in food supply, public health system like water. Industrial stage is characterized by fall in birth rates which eventually approaches the death rate as industrialization and modernization become widespread. Post-industrial stage characterized by stability of the population. India is a developing country which is struggling with the way and mean of controlling its rapidly increasing population. Different methods of population control includes family welfare program, socio-economic measure and different methods of birth control. Thank you.